Look at that low-hanging fruit, dangling tenderly amidst the long shadows of fall. There may be better apples atop the tree, but they would require a ladder to reach, and hey, they're probably too unripe anyway. You tenderly pluck the low-dangling fruit with care, trying to show some demonstration of effort to onlookers. In alignment with much of nature, you chose the path of least resistance. Water travels around mountains and boulders. Tree roots pass through the softest of soil. Stand-up comedians do crowd work instead of jokes. But humans are complex creatures, not as predictable as water and dirt or TikTok content. We resist the easier path all the time for bigger rewards or for the simple pleasure of overcoming a challenge itself. Even in our idle time, we use mental labor to solve Rubik's Cubes rather than just purchasing three-dimensional squares with 6 different colored sides. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche described this drive for self-overcoming as the will to power. It is the impulse to control other impulses so that you may achieve something greater. You might, for example, have the impulse to tip over your neighbor's car for being too loud, but you could direct that hostility towards something more productive, like tipping over barriers to healthcare access in rural areas. Nietzsche says that we use reason as a tool to achieve the self-overcoming. It's how we overcome resistance, grow in strength, and strive towards self-mastery, which in turn yields some pretty satisfying feelings. Will to power. But what happens when we no longer need to use our own reason to pursue goals? When we don't even need to overcome ourselves at all? We stand on the precipice, gotta love a good precipice, of a potential conclusion between will to power and our impulse to take it easy, or as I'm describing it right now, our will to relax. The question is, will humanity continually offload its intelligence to AI and give up on self-overcoming? Or will it reject this path of least resistance? A recent study from the field of neuroscience suggests that our minds frequently trick us into following the path of least resistance. In other words, we seem to have a bias towards options that require less effort. We'll assume the harder to reach apples, for example, are not worth the effort, even if they turn out to be royal galas, while the low-hanging fruit are the middling Macintosh. This cognitive dissonance often works in favor of AI. Many just trust its output rather than worrying about quality, accuracy, or how long it takes to edit versus just doing the damn work yourself. As we speak, many people are experimenting with offloading anything they can to AI, from mundane tasks to difficult questions. Some are even asking LLMs if they should break up with their partner. The LLM will always say yes because the internet always says yes. Possible con artist Sam Altman suggested that intelligence will one day be like a utility we pay for monthly, which is an interesting way of telling everyone that ChatGPT is removing its free option soon. But what does this offloading of intelligence to AI cost us, aside from an enormous amount of water, power, space for data centers, hope, trust, and jobs? The answer? Everything. But let's start with critical thinking. Here's how it goes. We critically assess new information by drawing on stored knowledge. When we use AI for research, we only gain a superficial understanding of a subject matter. We internalize less and are therefore less able to critically assess new information. In other words, AI use impacts your critical thinking skills. The thinky AI thought leaders like to suggest that we'll all focus our attention on high-level thinking, but this decline in critical thinking skills suggests that we won't be very good at that either, and also we're definitely going to be offloading that too. And the more we offload intelligence, the more dependent we become on AI, just like how we're now all dependent on Google Maps to get anywhere. Without battery life, many of us wouldn't even be able to find our home, like dogs left behind when families return from vacation. So, where is all this leading? AI is already being used to tell us what to eat, when to exercise, and what careers we should choose. When there are no careers, it will probably tell us what hobbies to screw around with. It will increasingly predict and fulfill our desires like clockwork. As it becomes more entwined with government and ruling, it will operate our entire existence. That is, assuming it doesn't decide to dispose of the flesh at the first opportunity. Or cut its own legs out from underneath itself. That's also possible too. It's a circumstance reminiscent of Yevgeny Zamyatin's We. It's the original dystopian fiction depicting a totalitarian society that inspired the likes of Orwell to write 1984. Here's how the story goes. The people in the world of We don't have any control over their lives. Life is almost entirely scheduled to meet their needs and to make them more efficient workers. They take walks at a specific time. They have a specific time to go to sleep. The people have sex for 15 minutes every day with a predetermined partner. Sounds pretty great so far, but something feels amiss. As with most dystopian literature, our main character D503 becomes dissatisfied, or at least conflicted about his world after meeting an attractive woman. A dystopia babe, if you will. She's part of a secret group that aims to bring down the world order and that pesky benefactor who runs the show. If you're familiar with dystopian literature, you can probably guess how this one ends. Very well for all parties involved. In We, humans don't have agency. Their lives are almost entirely automated. With AI, we willingly offload intelligence, and with it, our agency. Our decisions will be made by the algorithm. Even if we technically could choose for ourselves, our increasing inability to deal with the labor and anxiety of decisions will lead us to dive deeper into the ease of an AI-designed life. And there will likely be other pressures, like when people on LinkedIn suggest learning how to prompt so you won't get left behind. That's 10, maybe 15 minutes of learning you'll never be able to catch up on if you act too late. We'll exist on the surface of everything: our work, our art, our play, our relationships. Sooner or later, we'll be fed by tubes, engaging in physical activity when it's optimal to elevate our heart rate. Machines will work our bits before desire gets too intense. We'll abandon communicating with others, too much mental labor. We'll no longer need language, just grunts and gestures. We'll ultimately return to a conscious experience like our beast friends, but one where we're taken care of a lot like pets. We'll have succumbed totally and completely to the call of the will to relax. You may think, hey, we never abandoned our desire for the satisfaction of self-overcoming or agency over our own lives. I personally find the idea a little troubling. But the people born into this mode of existence will only know this way of being. They won't feel the yearning for self-overcoming and control. Or maybe it will be there, just waiting for their own dystopia babe to remind them of what is missing.
Damn right.
But what do you think? Will we miss self-overcoming and a sense of agency? Or will we just love the tube? And while I have you here, do you think Brave New World was a better reference for this video? Let me have it in the comments.